In this video, we're going to look at how to solve a consecutive integer problem. So we're going to stick with the problem solving plan that we already have in place. We'll talk about that later. And before we actually solve a problem, we're just going to make sure we know what all our definitions are that we need to know. So the first word that we're going to look at is integers. So an integer is a whole number. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could be 0. So for example, -5, -4, -3, 1, 10, 20, those are all whole numbers, positive, negative, and 0. All right. Now the word consecutive means a list that has numbers or things that follow one after the other, uninterrupted and in order. What do I mean by uninterrupted and in order? Well, that means we're not skipping any and we're going in order. So for example, if we start at 1, the next consecutive integer is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're not skipping any and you're going in order. So yeah, those are consecutive integers. But we can actually have consecutive even integers and consecutive odd integers. So let's look at what an even integer is. So an even integer, well, of course, has to be an integer, has to be a whole number, that has no remainder when you divide it by 2. So it's a number that is a perfect multiple of 2. And this includes 0 and it includes negative numbers. So for example, if we have consecutive even integers, for example, I could have -4, -2, 0 is 1, 2, 4, 6, on and on and on. So those are consecutive because we're not skipping any and they are in order and they're even. All right, similar for odd, consecutive, not odd, but odd. Consecutive odd integers, for example, well, those are numbers that do have a remainder, whole numbers that do have a remainder when divided by 2. And they can be negative as well. So for example, you could have -3, -1, 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on and so forth. So those are odd consecutive integers. We're not skipping any and they are in order. All right, so now let's take a look at what a consecutive integer problem would look like. Okay, so now that we know what consecutive integers, even and odd mean, and we have a strategic way to solve our problems, let's go ahead and solve this problem. All right, so we know that the sum of 4 consecutive integers is -106, but what we don't know is what these numbers are. So we can use or unknown in order to define a variable. So I choose to make my variable the smallest number. So I'm going to take the smallest number, which I don't know, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call it x. All right, so if the smallest number is x and there are 4 numbers, well, the next one up, they're consecutive, remember that. The next one up will be 1 more than the smallest one. So this is the smallest one. The next one up will be 1 more than that. The next one up will be 1 more than that, which is actually 2 more than the first one. And the fourth one will be 1 more than that. So now those are my 3 numbers. And when I add them all together, so I ran out of space on this side, so I'm going to write it over here. When I add them all together, my sum should be -106. All right, so now we can go ahead and join like terms. We have x here, 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 and here. So there are 4 x's plus, and now we have 1 plus 2 plus 3, which gives us overall 6. So that is equal to -106. So now we can isolate our x by first subtracting 6 from both sides. And we get that 4x is equal to -112. And we can divide both sides by 4. And we get that x is equal to, let's see here, x is equal to 28. Okay, but we are not done because the question actually asks for all the numbers. So if the smallest number is negative 28, I'll put it up there. Then the next biggest number after that is negative 27. Then we have negative 26, and there are 4 of the numbers, so we have negative 25. So the last step, whenever we're solving these problems, we always want to make sure it makes sense. So we're going to take those numbers and put them back into the word problem. So the sum of these 4 numbers here, they're consecutive integers, should be negative 106. And if you do add those numbers up, you do in fact get negative 106. And so that is in fact your answer in green. All right, let's try another example. Okay, so there is an additional element to this question because this question is actually about odd integers. So now we know the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is 75. So please remember something important about odd integers. They're not jumping by 1 anymore. They're now jumping by 2. The same thing would be true if this was an even number question. The numbers would be jumping by 2. And that's super important later on. Okay, so when we need to define our variable, you want to use one of the numbers. As I said before, I like to use the small number. So I'm going to say the smallest number in my 3 numbers, I'm going to call it x. All right, so if I have x as my smallest number, then the next number up will be x plus 2, this time because the numbers are odd, and so they're jumping by 2. And the third number would be x plus 4, again because it's jumping by 2's. And when you add all 3 numbers, you get 75. So now we can go ahead and solve this equation. And we have x here, here, and here. So we have 3x plus, now we have 2 here and 4 here, so plus 6 is equal to 75. Now to solve it, we have to isolate the x, so we subtract 6 from both sides, and we get that 3x is equal to 69. Finally, we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3, and we get that x is equal to 23. But that's not our answer, although I just put a box around it. That's not our answer because you're being asked to find all of the integers. So 23 is just, as we already know, is just the smallest. So one of the numbers is 23, and they're odd numbers, so the next one is 25, and the next one is 27. All right, and if you check it out, which is our last step to solving any problem, if you do in fact add 23, 25, and 27, you will definitely get 75, and that's our answer. It works.